I'm Andrew BACEVICH, president of the Quincy Institute, which I'm delighted to report this very day is celebrating the first anniversary of its founding. So happy birthday, QI, and many more to come. But the purpose of our gathering is not to have a birthday party, but to honor Representative Barbara Lee, a distinguished activist, entrepreneur, and legislator who currently represents California's 13th district in the US House of Representatives. Congresswoman Lee's accomplishments are legion, and the arc of her life story, from her birth in segregated El Paso, Texas, to a position of leadership in the House, is nothing short of inspiring. But our focus now is on one singular moment in that admirable life: her courageous opposition to the proposed de facto declaration of war that granted the President of the United States a virtual blank check to wage war virtually anywhere, with the events of 9/11 used as a pretext. So welcome, Congresswoman Lee, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. It's really an honor to be with you on this first anniversary, first birthday. I tell you, your time is now. The Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft is exactly what we need to look at for the future in terms of our new administration as it's coming in, what statecraft really means given the last 4 years. So this is timely, and I really feel honored to be with you.
Thank you. I wonder if we might begin with a conversation about the 2001 AUMF and about its implications. And let me begin with this question. The AUMF passed just 1 week after the 9/11 attacks. And I wonder if you could describe for us what was the mood in the House of Representatives at that time. I'm particularly interested to know if there was any serious debate about the implications of this piece of legislation, or it was kind of a just, people automatically signed off.
Thank you, Andrew. And let me say, I believe this was 3 days afterwards. 9/11, I think this resolution came to the floor on 9/14. And that just tells you how it was rushed. And really, I believe that, everyone felt they had to do something, first of all, but didn't know what. And so several versions of an authorization to use military force came to us from the White House. We kicked it back, said, no way, this is overly broad. It's too, it was worse than the 60-word resolution that I voted against. And finally, another one came over. And it was still, and we had several meetings. As a Democrat, we had several Democratic caucus meetings where we talked about it. And there were some who felt that it was overly broad and a blank check. But also, we have to remember that moment now. The mood was fear, angry, uncertainty, anxiety. No one knew what was going on. Actually, I was sitting in the Capitol and had to evacuate. My chief of staff's cousin was on flight 93, which went down. They took that plane down and it was coming into the Capitol. And I always have to honor and remember those heroes on that flight. And so for me, it was personal also. And then thinking of all of the people who had been killed, all of the first responders, all of those that had been injured, the communities that were hit hard, I was as angry as everyone. But I also, my background is psychiatric social work. And I know in the midst of emotion, anger, you don't make critical decisions, especially those decisions of going to war. And so I tried to talk to, and we had debate about it in our Democratic caucus. So I tried and I spoke and I said, this is overly broad. It's going to provide an opening for endless war. And any president, and it wasn't about Bush then, it was any president. And if you read the resolution, it's any president's authorized to use force against any organization, nation, individual connected to 9/11. I mean, it was that kind of language, 60 words. And so, the mood of it, and I think this is where emotions and fear sort of trumped everything else. And we're human beings too. So I can't say that I wasn't there also. And we did debate it, we talked about it, but everyone, I think the sentiment was we've got to be unified. We can't be partisan. This can't look like we're going against President Bush. The country's been hit. We're all Americans. We've got to retaliate. We've got to do what we need to do. We can't let this happen. That's understandable. And so I think the mood was unity. Let's not make this a partisan issue. I said, no, it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but we've got to craft an appropriate response. Okay, so we did debate it. Now, I was very upset about this because every time I read it, I said, this is really something that I can't support. But then again, I'm going to be not with the unified forces and voices. So it was a dilemma for me. And I wanted to actually stay on Capitol Hill and think about this and talk to some people. My pastor, my mother, my dad, who was a lieutenant colonel in the military, retired, RANDALL, who I'd worked for, Marcus Raskin, I called Marcus, everyone. And so I wanted to do that and not go to the memorial. And this is the backstory. I was standing in the cloakroom next to Elijah Cummings, and we were talking about it. And I was talking to Elijah about this authorization, said, I don't think I'm going to go to the memorial because I want to really think this through, talk to some people. He said, yeah, I hear you. It's a tough one. I was drinking some ginger ale. It was a rainy, cloudy day, and there were buses lined up in front of the Capitol, but I had decided not to go. Something told me at the last minute, I told Elijah, you know what? I think I'm gonna go. I mean, and he looked at me like, you said you weren't going. I think I'm going to go. I had a ginger ale in my hand. I'll never forget this. I ran down the steps. I was the last person, I believe, on the bus. Ran down the steps, went to that memorial, and it almost sounded like some of the speeches and eulogies were like war drums, beating the war drums at a church where we were supposed to be thinking about those who were killed and memorializing the lost lives. And then Reverend Nathan Baxter got up. I'll never forget that. He was the head of the cathedral, Washington Cathedral. And in his eulogy, he said, as we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. At that moment, I wrote it on the program. And at that moment, I said, I don't have to debate, talk to anyone else. He's right. This resolution is going to set the stage for perpetual war. It's going to set the stage for a reaction that we don't know what could come in terms of it being, in terms of it spiraling out of control. We can't do this. And so I expected it to come up in a few days. I got back to the Hill, made a few calls. Lo and behold, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and this was the Committee of Jurisdiction. Received a couple of calls. They said, Congresswoman, this resolution, this AUMF is coming up in 30 minutes. I said, what? It's supposed to come up tomorrow or Sunday. I said, nope, they've changed the schedule. So I raced down to the floor. Congressman Lantos and Chairman Hyde. I think Henry Hyde was the chairman, and Tom Lantos, God bless both of their souls. They were managing the bill. And I went up to Tom and I said, Tom, and because I'm on the Committee of Jurisdiction, I could get a couple of minutes to speak. And I scribbled out what I wanted to say. And after that, Henry Hyde and Tom Lantos and Steny Hoyer, I'll never forget this, they came up and hugged me and they said, you know, I know that was difficult and it's going to be pretty rough for you, but we respect you and we know you really mean it, and we know that you're on solid ground and that you're taking a risk, but we respect you. And so they, in many ways, were very friendly and consoling after I spoke. And so, you know, I was determined then, because I read that and talked to my dad. He said, you do not send, well, he was the first person who called me after I voted no. And he said, you don't send our young men and women in harm's way and not know what you're doing. And it was overly broad. It was 60 words. Fast forward, it's been used now over 41 times in a declassified report by CRS. Excuse me. Oh, boy.
That's such a compelling.
Excuse me.
explanation. But ultimately, nobody shared your views, not even your fellow Democrats.
They shared my views. Some of them shared my views, Andrew, and you can go back and read some of the record, the congressional record. I encourage you to read. Yeah, but they shared my views. You know, there's one thing when in a debate, you can talk about what the issues are, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what the impact is, and you make those decisions and then you vote. I mean, you lay out both sides of the arguments if you so choose. But our beloved John Lewis came up to me and he mentioned this to the press because I didn't want to talk to the press, but he told the Washington Post, he said, you know, I should have been with Barbara. I should have voted with her because this was the wrong vote to give any administration the authority to go to war forever. And so John Lewis publicly apologized and said he was sorry he did that. And other members came up to me that evening and out of friendship, it was not hostile at all, and said, Barbara, you better change that vote. You're not going to win re-election. I remember one of my colleagues said. Then another one said, you're doing such great work on HIV and AIDS and global health and all your foreign policy work. You won't be able to do that anymore. Another one said, look, even as a progressive, you can't, you know, show disunity with the president. I mean, so my colleagues kept trying to get me to change the vote, and I respected their vote. They respected my vote, but out of friendship, they tried to get me to change it. And my mother later said, I could have told you that when she makes her mind up, she's pretty stubborn, that she's going to evaluate it and go back and forth. And Ron, finally, let me just say, Randall, we talked about it. He's a psychiatric social worker also. And he never told me what he would do or how he would vote. I worked for him for 11 years and he served for 27 years, chaired the Armed Services Committee, very astute, very brilliant leader. And Ron gave me what he thought were the pros and cons. He said, this is a hard one. These are the pros, these are the cons. Let the chips fall where they may, you make that decision. You have to follow what you think your conscience dictates, but also the Constitution. So I reread with Article 2, you know, I reread parts of the Constitution. I said, no, this is giving any president the authority to wage war in perpetuity. He or she will never have to come back to Congress for authorization at any point. So it's unconstitutional, it's wrong. And so the legal arguments, the constitutional arguments, as well as the arguments in terms of just not engaging in war on a humbug, knowing we had been hit, knowing we needed a thoughtful, appropriate response, that went into my thinking as I voted no. And I still think that was the right vote.
Well, you took a lonely stand. It was a courageous stand. And a lot of time has passed now. And all these years later, when you reflect now on that vote, what does the vote mean to you?
Well, what that vote means to me is that personally, I'm a person of faith. And if you stand for what you believe is right, sooner or later, the rest of the world or your family or your friends or your Congress will catch up with you. Because there's such a thing as right and wrong when it comes to matters of war and peace and all issues. So you have to do what you believe is right. Secondly, it's really amazing how it's taken 20 years to educate my colleagues. Now, mind you, the public got to where they were much quicker than members of Congress. And also what it means to me is that this is a marathon that we're in terms of social change, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of getting to some statecraft. It's not something that happens overnight. You've got to really have patience and educate people and hope the world doesn't blow up in the meantime. But with my colleagues, once I started talking to them about how they have, by not voting to repeal it, you've taken away your constituents' right and responsibility through you to make these decisions based on what the Constitution requires. So it meant to me that I had to be an educator, and I had to, and I'm not a lawyer by profession, but I know the Constitution and I read a lot and I know a lot of law that governs what I have to do here in Congress. And so I had found myself explaining the Constitution and explaining war powers, explaining the three branches of government, explaining, why we do not give any president just unilateral authority to go to war. Just in terms of our democracy, what I learned was that also a lot of people in the public, mind you, because I got 60, 70,000 emails, letters, phone calls, about 40 or 50% of them were hate mail, threats, death threats, calling me a traitor, telling me I should be hung, I had to have security and all. But what I learned was that people don't even understand that the right to dissent is central to our democracy. You can't have a democracy and not allow voices of opposition to bring forth their points of views without trying to kill them. And I learned during that period that a lot of people didn't understand that in matters of national security, especially. They think that it's only on the more domestic issues that we can have debates, or it's only on the soft, easy kind of questions that we can dissent, but not on matters of war and peace. And so what I learned was that we need to educate the public a lot about the Constitution and what members of Congress's role and responsibilities are.
Now, with the passage of time, I think a substantial number of Americans have come to share your views with regard to the AUMF, and a substantial number of members of Congress, but it stays on the books, hasn't been repealed. What would you say is the outlook for bringing about its repeal?
Look, I'm going to always be, as a Black woman in America, I'm optimistic all the time about change and about our goals. They may not happen overnight, but remember now, probably 20-25% of members of Congress were serving in 2001. No, there were very few members who were here now who were here then. And so, having said that, the public is there. And so I'm very optimistic because I have gotten this repealed in the House and built support in the Senate 3 or 4 times over the last 4 or 5 years. Bipartisan support. Some of you may remember I got it in the appropriations bill. No one thought I could get it in. The repeal of the 2001. Republicans and Democrats voted for it. And before it got to the Rules Committee, Paul Ryan, when he was Speaker, he just stripped it from the bill, knowing that I probably could have gotten it passed then. And so it takes fight. You have to have that fighting spirit. You have to know that you're going to get to where we need to be and be persistent. And that's what I think, just as a Black woman, I have to say, that's what my life has been about. We have to be persistent if we want to make a systemic change, and if we want to make this Constitution work. We have to keep going. And so, yeah, I'm optimistic. It's hard, though. Let me tell you, it's very hard because some want to oftentimes do less than a full repeal and say, well, maybe we'll do this, tinkering around the edges. I said, no, we can't go backwards. We have to have a full repeal. And then if any president wants to use force, go to war, bring us an authorization. Let us debate it and let us make some decisions. Don't just say, we're going to narrow it or we're going to keep it on the books until we can come up with another one. No, we need a full repeal, and the repeal bills that I have give us 8 months to come up with a new one if in fact we want to engage in a sustained war anywhere in the world. I mean, this authorization has been used in Yemen, Somalia, 41 times in, I think, 18 or 19 countries. And so it takes a while, but yeah, I'm very optimistic. It may take another, who knows? But I think now with the threats before us, I think members of Congress want to do their job. And when I tell them, you're out of the mix, you're missing in action, your constituents aren't going to be very happy with you. They really sit up and listen. And that, I think, is extremely important. That's how democracy should work.
Let me ask you one more question, which gets to the implications or the application of the AUMF. I mean, we've now been at war in various places around the planet for going on 2 decades. What should the American people have learned from that experience of endless war? And how should the lessons taken from this experience affect US policy going forward?
First thing we should learn is how these young men and women, what happened to them in these wars, and what happened upon their return, and the lack of opportunities, the lack of medical care, the lack of concern. So many of our veterans sleeping on the streets, so many of them unhoused, so many of them needing help, so many of them weren't able to get a job, so many of them with PTSD, they can't get mental health services. So, you know, the VA just, in many respects, our country abandoned these young men and women, and it is a shame and disgrace. And so that's one lesson we need to learn, is that when we send young people into harm's way, we better be ready to help them when they come back, because we have a whole generation now of veterans who are just living on the edge because this country did not take care of them. And they sent them over there, not to mention the trillions of dollars, and not to mention the numbers of Iraqis and the number of people who, Afghans, the number of children and women and non-combatants who were killed, who are refugees now. I mean, come on. This is major what we did, what this country did. And so the lessons are, we don't do that unless there's some serious national security threats that the Congress sees as worthy of bombing and entering into war. Secondly, talk about statecraft. There are three stools of our foreign, or there used to be, of our foreign policy, right? Diplomacy, development, and defense. It's out of balance now, totally. With the defense budget, $740 billion? No way. Our diplomatic initiatives and development strategies have been almost zeroed out by this administration. And so now we have a foreign and military policy that's totally out of balance, which does not keep us safe, does not ensure global peace and security, but really puts, it really puts us at more risks. And so our national security has been totally eroded because of this. And then the kind of hatred that's in the world. I travel all around the world before COVID, of course, as a vice chair of the subcommittee that funds all of our international efforts, non-military international efforts, State Foreign Operations Subcommittee. So I have the privilege to go everywhere in the world. And I have been, in the last 4 years, I mean, the lack of respect, the lack of understanding of what's going on in this country, the way, you know, other countries now look at us, they don't trust us, the lessons around the use of force and talking about democracy, yet here at home, you know, we haven't quite figured that out with this administration in terms of the fair and free elections. So I share this because it's so many lessons that I've learned as a result of being able to try to bring some kind of rational foreign and military policy back into play in the United States Congress.
You are an optimistic person, and I'm guessing you're optimistic about our ability to repair the damage that you just referred to.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. Now, I was on the drafting committee for the Democratic Party platform. And nobody ever reads the platform, okay? So I understand that. But it was, when you look at the foreign policy and when you look at the language that we got in on our platform, it talks about forever wars, endless wars, and repealing these authorizations. And I think the Biden administration really understands that Congress has to be put back in the mix. We have to do our job. So just look at the Democratic Party platform as a glimmer of hope. It didn't go all the way where I wanted it to go, but it certainly talks about taking these authorizations, 2001 and 2002, the Iraqi one, off the books and coming to Congress for new authorizations. So yes, I'm optimistic. Do I think it's gonna be easy? No, it hasn't been easy, but it hasn't been easy for me as a Black American. So we gotta get into that mindset and understand that nothing is in a democracy is easy, and especially when it comes to issues of peace and security.
Well, I'm very grateful. I think we're all very grateful to you for sharing these thoughts with us. Before we go further into our program, some of your admirers would like to offer their own congratulations for this award that you're about
Oh
to.
my goodness.
Run the video, please.
I want to congratulate my dear friend and colleague, Congressmember Barbara Lee, on winning the Quincy Award for Responsible Statecraft. Barbara is my hero. She's dedicated and compassionate, and she knows the dangers of endless wars. That's why she courageously voted no on the authorization for use of military force in 2001, and has continued to be a vocal champion for diplomacy and peace. Congratulations, Barbara, on this well-deserved recognition.
Congresswoman Lee, on behalf of the Veterans of Common Defense, we're so proud that you're getting this award. Thank you for your steadfast commitment to peace and justice and helping our veteran community.
Congratulations, Barbara, on a very well-deserved award. You have fought tirelessly to repeal the 2001 AUMF, as well as so many other efforts for peace and justice. All I can say is I don't know many people who could have a slogan like yours. Barbara Lee speaks for me, you speak for me, and a whole lot of other people. And thank you and congratulations.
3 days after the 9/11 attacks, I remember sitting with IPS founder Mark Raskin, marking up the draft Barbara had sent over to us. We knew she wouldn't have many allies opposing the authorization for war. We all knew it would be used to create forever wars. But we didn't imagine Barbara Lee would be the only one out of 535 members of Congress with the courage to stand up, the only one. For that, she remains a hero today.
Congratulations, Barbara, on receiving the Quincy Institute's award for statecraft. I couldn't think of a member more worthy of this award than you. I have often said that if there were a sequel to the Profiles of Courage, a modern-day version, the first chapter would be about you, Barbara. I'm honored to be your colleague, honored to be your neighbor, and so proud of you for receiving this well-deserved honor.
You know what they say, Barbara Lee speaks for me. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, my big sister and OG squad, you are the embodiment of activist leadership. When you were that sole vote in 2001 against the AUMF, you provided the space and the roadmap for me and so many others to take similarly lonely votes today on a strength of conviction. So I thank you. I thank you for your example. I thank you for your tireless leadership, and congratulations on this well-deserved recognition.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, on behalf of the women and men of Vote Vets, congratulations on receipt of this award from the Quincy Institute. Richly deserved.
I congratulate Congresswoman Barbara Lee for her many years of advocating against endless wars. Representative Lee's leadership inspires all of us in Congress to reassess our military commitments, not just in the Middle East, but in many other parts of the world as well. I have no doubt that Representative Lee will continue tirelessly to wage this fight, and I look forward to continue working with her in the Congressional War Powers Caucus. Congratulations, Barbara.
Congratulations, Barbara, on receiving this amazing and well-deserved recognition. You have been an inspiration to me and to so many others across the country who work for peace. Your moral compass and your courage to say no to war gives all of us the strength to do the right thing. You're an amazing public servant and a wonderful friend.
I would like to congratulate Representative Lee for her courage and leadership in voting against the endless war authorization in 2001, and also for the continued work that she does, tireless work that she does in promoting peace and justice in the world.
I'd like to congratulate my wonderful friend and neighbor, Congressman Barbara Lee, for this recognition, for her tenacity in her opposition to the War Authorization Act and to its repeal.
We know that the Constitution gives Congress, and only Congress, the power to declare war. And there are a few in Congress who believe that power should never be abdicated. And one of them is Representative Barbara Lee. And we at Concerned Vets, we might not agree with Representative Lee on everything, but we do agree with her on this issue because it's so important. So to you, Representative, thank you for your leadership in this very, very important issue.
Congratulations to my dear friend and colleague, Barbara Lee. There is no one more deserving of this very prestigious award than you, Barbara. You who have had the courage time and time again to stand for what's right, even if it means standing alone. Thank you, congratulations, felicidades, I love you. Mwah.
I'm so excited to add my congratulations to Congresswoman Barbara Lee for receiving the first ever Quincy Award for Responsible Statecraft. I'm deeply honored to call Congresswoman Lee a friend, and I am so grateful for her years and years of leadership in Congress as an unmitigated champion for peace. As always, Barbara Lee speaks for me.
Congratulations, Barbara Lee, for receiving the Quincy Award for Responsible Statecraft. As the sole member of the U.S. House of Representatives who voted against the 2001 authorization for the use of military force, and for your consistent efforts to repeal that AUMF, you are a shero to the Friends Committee on National Legislation.
Congresswoman Lee, from all of us at the Quincy Institute, we want to thank you for your unyielding political courage.
And for your advancement of ideas that move U.S. foreign policy away from endless wars.
For your constant efforts over the decades toward vigorous diplomacy in the pursuit of peace.
We look forward to work and partner with you to end all endless wars.
And this is mind-boggling. I am totally, first of all, I am shocked, surprised, and overwhelmed. How did you get everybody to do this? First of all, given how busy everyone is, but secondly, it's very humbling, and you never know. I mean, these are all friends, and these are all soldiers in this army for peace. And for them to say these humbling remarks, to provide their feelings and insights really, really leave me speechless, but thank you so much. During moments like this, especially during these very challenging and difficult times, boy, to feel the love from the Quincy Institute, from you, Andrew, and from my colleagues and friends who we work with all the time is just so uplifting and will keep me going. Every now and then, these boosts of inspiration, say, okay. You ask how I keep doing this? Well, it's people like this who I'm privileged and honored to work with that keep me going, because they too have a vision for a world without war. So thank you guys so much. And let me just give a shout out to everyone from California and my district and everyone who's on this call, this meeting, this Zoom event, this award ceremony. Oh, God, it's really being here in Washington, D.C. this evening with you just has really made me very happy and given me a lot of what I need to keep going.
Well, on behalf of my Quincy Institute colleagues, let us send a little bit more love your way. Let's move on to the presentation of the award. It is my great privilege to present you with the Quincy Institute Award for Responsible Statecraft for 2020. Let me read some text here to provide the This annual award honors those who have made conspicuous contributions to advancing the Quincy Institute's mission of creating a world in which peace is the norm and war the exception. The Institute and the award are named after John Quincy Adams, our 6th president, 8-term member of the House of Representatives, and one of the most distinguished diplomats in our history. Always vote principle, Adams famously declared, though you may vote alone. Well, Congressman Barbara Lee knows what it means to vote alone. And like Adams, she stood alone on the floor of the House of Representatives in 2001, exemplifying political courage by casting the sole vote against the authorization to use military force that then plunged the United States into endless war. In taking your stand, you said, quote, I could not support such a grant of war-making authority to the president. I believe it would put more innocent lives at risk. As we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. Since Congress granted this authorization, 3 successive administrations have used it over 2 decades to justify the use of lethal force in at least 19 countries. You have led many efforts to repeal the measure. In 2018 and 2019, under your leadership, the House of Representatives passed legislation to repeal the AUMF, only to be stymied by the Senate. It takes tremendous courage to stand up against the folly of war, especially after an unprecedented attack on the homeland. The citation that accompanies this award reads as follows: for your principled stand in opposition to the 2001 authorization for the use of military force, and for your tireless efforts to repeal it, the board of directors and the staff of the Quincy Institute proudly confer on you, Congresswoman Barbara Jean Lee, the 2020 Quincy Award for Responsible Statecraft. And the award itself, which I believe you have, carries this inscription: for your courage under fire in seeking to prevent America from entering into endless war. So we thank you for your wisdom, for your courage, and for your leadership. And if you would like to make any remarks yourself, this is your chance to do so.
Can I show the award?
We hope you will.
I would love it. This is just beautiful. And to receive this from such a prestigious institute and from people who really understand what peace is about, and that's preservation of our planet, is just really remarkable and amazing. So thank you all so much. And Andrew, let me say, sometimes, you know, folks say talking about peace means that you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. And I say, look, we've got to talk about the P word. Sometimes in committee, don't say peace, say redefine it. No, what the Quincy Institute and your supporters, your board, your staff are doing is making peace a legitimate outcome of the work that we do. And so thank you for talking about peace, and make sure you keep doing that, because so many think that the P word, peace and poverty, should not be articulated in this world. And so just thank you for recognizing how important that is. And that to have an institute that is dedicated to peace is just exactly what we need. You know, I have a legislation, again, people think, oh, it's so idealistic, but we picked up a lot of support calling for the establishment of a Department of Peace Building. You know, we have a Department of Defense, which has been engaging in war. Well, we need to have a Department of Peace Building. And in that legislation, we talk about peace throughout the world and peace at home, and what it takes and what we should do to have a country where peace is central to all of our policies and programs. So I hope you have a chance to look at our Department of Peace Building, because that's another bill that's a very positive bill moving forward that we think provides the framework for really setting up a structure in our federal government that's focused on what the Quincy Institute's goals are. And so we've got to keep at this. We, in the Black church, we have a song saying, we ain't no way tired. We've come too far from where we started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy. Well, that's exactly how I feel about my life and my work. My colleagues, all of those who were on the video, I know that's how they feel, because they've been out here a long time dealing with this. And you, Andrew, and the Quincy Institute, because it's so important that we not drop the ball, because we have the future generations are looking to us to turn them over, to turn a world over to them that is peaceful, that's clean, that's green, and that's sustainable. And so thank you all so much. I think tonight I'm thinking about my mother, who told me never look back, keep moving forward, stand up for what is right. She'd be so proud tonight. And my dad, I'm Army brat, 25 years, born and raised in El Paso, Texas. He served at Fort Bliss. He was in 2 wars, in World War II in Korea. And I grew up with my dad away at war. And I know the impact of war on families. And so peace has got to be patriotic, and it is, and we have no option except to fight for peace. So thank you guys again.
Well, I'm listening to that, and I'm thinking that I hope you will consider us at QI a partner with you as you continue this important work. Let me just say in conclusion how much we thank you for taking time to spend with us this evening. You've honored us by your presence. We thank all those who are tuning in to this event, who've joined us. And please, all of you, if you'd like to know more about the Quincy Institute, please visit our website, sign up on our email list. Again, thanks to all. This concludes the ceremony. Good night, ma'am.
Good night, Andrea. Thank you for sharing a little bit about Quincy Adams. You know, I'm gonna have to go back and reread his autobiography now.
Good night.
You learn something new every day, but I really thank you so much for this. It's really an honor, a privilege. So happy to be with you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.